This is the bike I'm going to be swapping the mid-drive into. It's a 2004 Kona Stab Garbanzo SE. It's a rental bike from Whistler Mountain. I chose this bike because it has big disc brakes and hydraulic disc brakes, and it has nice fat tires, and the suspension, which has lots of travel. It's a bit of a heavy bike. It weighs in at 43-ish pounds. And but the main reason is the bike was cheap. I got it used off Craigslist for about 500 bucks Canadian. So now let's get this bike stripped apart and get it ready for the mid-drive. Here are the tools I'll be using for this project: a screwdriver, a 1/4-inch ratchet with an extension and a bit adapter, a 15mm wrench for the pedals, a bit set that has some Allen bits on it, some Allen wrenches, some zip ties, a weird looking wrench for the bottom bracket nut, a bottom bracket socket, I think that's a 20 spline, a crank remover, a adjustable wrench, and some zip tie cutters. And in my case, I also used a rivet nut tool. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the cranks. So here's the bottom bracket all out. So next we take the motor assembly and then we'll slide it on. Looks like it fits okay. The motor height sits a little bit lower than I like, but what can you do? Now I'm going to check the ring gear for clearance against the rear swing arm. Clearance looks good. So now I'm going to flip the bike around. Inside the hardware bag, you're going to have some things that you're going to need for this. You get this bracket here and 2 locking washers, 5 of these screws with pink Loctite on it for the ring gear, 2 bolts here to bolt the bracket to the motor in these 2 spots, and these little end caps for the cranks themselves. This bracket here goes on only one way. It has these little ribs here which will bite into the housing of the bottom bracket. Will prevent the motor from moving up and down like so. So first we're going to mount this on. It's important to tighten this nut here really tight. I'm not sure like how many foot-pounds tight, but it's got to be tight enough so that the motor will not rotate. So once that's tight enough so that it doesn't rotate, then you know you're good. And then next you're going to want to install this little locking beauty ring that says Bafang on it. Next we're going to install one of the cranks. This is the left side. Or bolts. So now I'm going to put the screws in to tighten down the ring gear. Now the other crank. So that's it for mounting the motor. Now let's get on to the electrical side of things. So we're going to start off with the speed sensor, and there's the little magnet thing that mounts to the spoke. So to mount that to the spoke, you choose one of the spokes that are on the side that's closest to the arm that you're going to mount the speed sensor to. So I'm going to choose this one here. So something like that. And then the speed sensor comes in two pieces. This little bracket here will tape and zip tied to the frame itself, and this little plus sign here is where the sensor will pick up the magnet, and it slides in and out of this bracket like so to adjust the distance. So it comes with this little screw here, and after you set the distance, you just put the screw in that little hole there, just tighten it down and it'll lock the distance. You're going to want a distance between the magnet and the sensor to be less than half a centimeter. So that looks good here. Just going to put the screw in and tighten it down. This is the connector that's going to connect into the speed sensor. As you can tell, I made some bad choices on the design of the battery pack or the frame choice, because I can't fit this inside the frame. So I'm going to have to do something with mounting it something like this. So I'm going to take off this bottom plate here, mounting bracket, and since there's no bottle mounts on the bottom of the frame, I'm going to have to do some drilling and tapping and hoping for the best. Actually, you know what I can do? I'm going to be drilling some holes in the bottom of the frame and using some rivet nuts and using that to secure the battery to the bottom.
So after I zip tied everything up and tidied up the wiring and mounted the gauge and throttle, this is what it all looks like. I know the motor sits a little bit lower than I'd like, but in the future, when the weather gets better, I will probably mount this motor onto a hybrid bike that I also have. And with that bike, the motor should be tucked up higher than this bike. It rides really well. I enjoy it. It rides really fast, much faster than the other cheap bikes that I've had in the past. And so far, I am super happy with this purchase. Something else to note is the weight this thing added. It added about 20 pounds. So my bike started off at about 43 pounds. It currently sits at 63 pounds. So it does add a fair amount of weight. But since I've mounted the battery as low as possible and the motor sits quite low, you're not going to really notice much handling difference. So that's it for this video. Thank you for watching. Hope you can subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.